On November the 22nd, 1963, President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was riding along in his motorcade down here in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas. When he made the turn from Houston onto Elm, shots rang out. President Kennedy was assassinated. Almost 50 years now. It'll be 50 years on November the 22nd, 2013, which is fastly approaching. We have still not been told the whole truth. The Kennedy assassination, in my opinion, is a conspiracy. Will we ever know the whole truth? Is it possible? I don't know. But I hope by watching these documentary films and talking to the people we've interviewed so you can view them and make up your own decision in your own mind, then I've done my job. I'm David Knight. I own Knight Publications. I've been studying the Kennedy assassination for the last 2 decades plus, 23 years to be exact. I'm hoping by the efforts that I've made to sit down and speak with these people and with my work that I've done, I hope that it can shine light into your opinion of what really happened on that fateful day in Dallas, Texas. And hopefully one day we'll know exactly what happened to President John Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Hi, I'm Toni Glover, and on November 22nd, 1963, I was 11 years old, and I begged my mother, and we came to Dealey Plaza, and I stood right here, and I could see the limo come down and go around the corner, halfway down the street, and then its head exploded. And she jumped out of the car, and Clint pushed her back in, and they disappeared. And in that split couple of seconds, everybody who's up here couldn't see it, even up there. So everyone was just confused, mostly. And I was the only one who could see, and I was saying it was fireworks. Until she crawled out of the back. And then you knew Jackie Kennedy doesn't crawl out of the back of a limousine unless something very, very bad has happened. So at that point, it was just this sinking gut feeling, you know.
It's November the 18th, 2012. We're down here in Dealey Plaza and we're speaking with an eyewitness who was down here on November the 22nd, 1963, watched the motorcade and saw President Kennedy pass right before, just before the fatal shots ran out. With that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Toni Glover.
Hi. I suppose that I should say we came down here and I chose this pedestal. At first, when we came down here, I ran back and forth on the grass trying to decide where was the best place. I was afraid maybe the police would stop us if we were down there. So this was the vantage point, and you know, he came around the corner onto Houston and it was like you could touch him. He was so close. And the corner, and of course once he went around the corner, we watched a little bit, but then people were dissipating and my mother was turning to get down. And I was the one who stepped to the back, the very back of this pedestal so I could see as much as I could. And I just focused on the car, you know, until it went under the underpass. And it was horrible. It was gross. His head exploded. 11, I hadn't seen a head explode, and I certainly had become attached to him emotionally, and it was pretty bad.
How is you as an eyewitness down here in '63? How has that day affected you? Seeing that take place and how JFK was so loved by you. How did that make you feel?
My house was not a happy house, and it sent me into some pretty, I won't say that it sent me into this, but for the next 10 years, I was in a life and death struggle at home. And this certainly had a big chunk of that hanging in there. And I would say that the family stuff was survivable, but when it got to this kind of thing, that's when suicide and carving and all this kind of stuff starts. And I was like that for 15 years, and then finally got around that. But as any witness will tell you, you cannot come back here and not cry. It just is so fused with joy and horror almost at the same time. I use the term emotional whiplash. Everything was one way and then everything was gone. And we didn't know that specifically at that moment, but we knew a lot. And I had run over to some police motorcycles to see if I could hear what was going on. And I was a little afraid they were going to run me off. And I didn't hear a whole lot. I just heard, and a gunshot. And I came back over here. My mother was right in this area, and I said, we got to go right now. And we were just parked just down Elm. And we walked down there, got in the car, and drove down Elm right through the crime scene. And cars were just driving through it. And of course today, we think about the evidence. I mean, they were driving through his brains on the ground.
They hadn't roped it off or put any caution, police tape up?
Nothing. You look at any film after it happened, and this many cars are just going right down.
Okay.
Even when people were running one way or direction, cars are going on down. It's pretty amazing.
Oh, absolutely. The last question I have for you is, do you think that it still matters to find the truth about what really happened to President Kennedy and to bring closure to the case?
I think that would be a great idea. I am very happy that that's not my job. I'm very happy that I only can tell what I remember and what I don't remember and where I was and things like that. Who did it? Where? From? I don't understand how any witness can tell you that. Just because of the sheer elation on both sides of the street. He was giggling, she was smiling, it was all perfect. And they turned the corner, it was still perfect. And then you hear a bang or something and it's like, everything's perfect, who cares? The second one, gunshot, kind of. But he was behind I couldn't see that. And then the last one, I guess one thing we could time is that the second one, what is called the second one, happened when I couldn't see him.
Okay.
And that was for just a split second. And then there was time before his head exploded.
Okay.
So that says something about space between shots. But I don't know how to quantify that. I did not see the second one, and the third one was right in the middle. The car traveled some before the headshot.
Okay. I did think of one last question.
Yeah. I didn't do it.
No, very easy. But
Or the cuffs.
when you heard the bang, did you think it was a gunshot, or do you think
The
it was
first
something
one?
else?
Couple of things personally. A week or so before, a kid had thrown a cherry bomb, so we used to call them, in an auditorium. And they had a lot of paper. And they would explode with a lot of paper. And of course it was deafening when it happened in an auditorium. So we were all a little bit like this. When the first bang, whatever, hit, it was like that.
It sounded kind of like a firecracker.
Yeah, it sounded like an M80 or something like that going off. Plus, bang, bang, and it just starts bouncing all over these buildings and the canyons.
Quite an echo.
Oh, yeah, there is. And so my tunnel vision was on the president and her coming out of the car and him jumping on, and my total, everybody's. They were literally looking up at me going, what's happening? And I went.
You had a good vantage point by standing on this pedestal.
And you see here, if you were standing on the ground, nothing. You could see nothing that happened.
Up high, it gave you a bird's eye view.
It really did. Of the whole thing, it gave me a great view of it. I just occurred to me about that the car was further down the road between 2 and 3. Which means I can tell you 2 and 3 were not bam bam.
They weren't right on top of one
No,
another. They
because
had
one
space.
happened when he was behind here, and the third one happened when he was down on the X.
Okay.
So how long did it take the limo to get down to the X? Once it was here, that's your time to check. 2 and 3. Maybe. It sounds logical. And they asked me how many seconds. You see that I'm standing here with my mom here, and I need to turn. I'm still trying to stabilize her. You do have to look down and move your feet over because you don't want to go in the pond.
Right.
How long did that take?
Yeah.
Because I was doing that while he was behind, I wasn't able to just go like this. You had to not fall off. Did that take an eighth of a second? I don't know. I can only, judge these questions by my physical movements.
Right.
How long did it physically, and like here, if a guy's sitting here and doesn't want to leave, and I want down,
Right. There was somebody sitting here
there
on
was
that day?
a Hispanic man sitting here. He did not want to get up and go. And so we went, okay, when that happens, you have to change your direction.
Right.
Remember changing your direction. You would remember jumping off and doing straight things, but teeny tiny things will sometimes jar me.
Okay.
I'm trying to stay as ignorant as I can
Right.
about all of the theories and even the evidence, because I think, if I don't know something, I don't want to find out what it is. I have thought about seeing if I could go to a hypnotist and see if they could get more details out of my head. I don't know. I've never been hypnotized. I have had people try, but that to me sounds really interesting.
Unlock and open a locked door.
A lot
Yeah.
more details of exactly who was doing what. I can tell you though, right here, everybody was talking and laughing, and we're just all, he's coming! He's coming around the corner! He's gonna be here! And I wasn't the only one.
Right.
And people were not lined up. They were all talking everywhere, and this crowd was talking. I wish some of the people who were right here, you ask them and they will talk about me talking to them, and my mother is very, very friendly, So we talked to a lot of people sitting here. We waited a long time. You don't just sit there silent. And that's where you don't care if they're strangers, You're in a situation that's just the best.
The days were a lot different back in the 60s.
Yeah, that's true too.
So,
Yep. Well, we got down. I went over and looked at the motorcycles. I came back and said, Mom, we need to go right now. Right now, we need to go. We walked over there down to our car. We were probably here a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Not more than that.
Okay.
After the headshot. Because I immediately went over there and then I came back. Mom's got a heart condition. Come on, honey, let's go. We were at my house. 10 minutes, 15 minutes after the shot. Because we live straight down there to Hampton Road. You turn left, 3 blocks, you're in my house. And I didn't know that Oswald supposedly was on Beckley, where I was born. And then he went to my theater, and then he was in my backyard the whole time.
places that you've been to and
Oh, every day of my life.
yeah.
We went to the Texas Theater 2-3 times a month, and that was 4 blocks from my high school. So,
It hit home.
it was in my backyard. And I can tell you that it was so personal, having been here, and then it happening in my backyard, that I was probably, and intellectually the whole world is, disturbed, is trying to heal. And I know I knew that, but when I was about 30, it's like one of those things turns over in your stomach and you go, oh, wow, this really wasn't in my backyard. I mean, yeah, but the in an emotional way that the rest of the series should. So that's what we did, and then we laid on our stomachs and watched 5 days of funeral and state stuff. And I think that it's really important for you to understand that the witnesses within an hour had heard that 3 shots were fired from the school. That was said on the news while the people were still like this. So now you ask them how many shots. Well, they said there were 3.
Yeah.
They said there were 3, and I was, I believed it.
Kind of on a subconscious level, kind of put that in your head.
It becomes part of your memory of the situation. It just becomes part of that. So I think people should really understand that witnesses are the least reliable source of information ever. We do our best, and witnesses really want to give you an opinion. They want to answer your question, and the need to answer your question is where we can just step off and go, well, I heard that, and then we just start sounding like Fox News. Someone said, I heard that. People are saying not a single fact in the whole conversation, because people say, and then they just say whatever. And they don't have to say true or not. I heard this. Anyhow, these people would have definitely had that seared into their memory. And I have done studies on norepinephrine and memory, and it's amazing what happens. If you ask people where were they when Kennedy was killed, they'll tell you the color of the paint in the room they were standing. They'll tell you if it was a color of white TV, who was in the acute detail at such an emotional time is what happened. It just is. That was something that happens to your body. And like I said, when you hear dun 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 dun, you think, shark. And you kind of, wait a minute. And that is deeply, deeply embedded in the part of our brain that is really in part of the stem of the brain. It handles all the emotions. And something like that happens. Well, I remember a great deal of it, but my memory is about what it did to me, what it did to my mom, not who did what.
Right.
But standing up here and looking down there, you can understand why someone would think it happened down there.
Right.
Looking up here, why? I mean, this was my school books. Stacks of my school books were there. Why am I going to look up there? His head blows up. I didn't even see people running to the dressing room. I mean, I was off of here and over to see what I could find out. It's all so close. That's what it doesn't look like in pictures. It's just touch over there. We were talking about him coming down the middle of the street, and then that door is stretched. Looks like it's 20 feet.
Yeah. But it's a lot closer to what
he was. 10 feet, 12 feet from the curb. Much closer. And I wish I knew whether or not I'd talked to, Rosemary Willis or Terry or the family who, got all the camera shots. I don't know if I did or not. Everybody was just kind of milling around. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know if Teresa kind of remembers standing up here. I don't know. Fortunately, it's not my job to know what happened. It's just not my job to know what happened.
Okay.
If I can get it written down, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, I guess with that's been our interview with Dr. Toni Glover, an eyewitness that was down here on November 22nd, 1963. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Appreciate it. Anytime.
We're standing here with Sherry Fiester, author of Enemy of the Truth, and she's been a guest speaker with us before on one of our previous DVDs, and now her book's come out, and she's going to tell us about that and some other interesting facts. Sherry?
Hi. President Kennedy said that the great enemy of the truth was actually the myth and not the lie. And based upon his quote, I decided to look at different myths of the assassination and see if they could be addressed by using forensic techniques. So I chose 8 myths that I was familiar with and that I think most people are interested in. And I decided to address them as individual chapters in my new book.
Okay.
Some of the chapters that I worked on, I talked about whether or not the Dallas Police Department ascribed to their own protocols and to the national standards of the day in processing the crime scene and making that investigation. I also looked at whether or not there was 2 headshots, because in the Zapruder film you see Kennedy's head move forward slightly before it moves back. And some people believe that there are 2 shots, one from the rear and almost simultaneously one from the front to push him back. But actually that is explained with wound ballistics and how a target reacts to a projectile when it's being struck. So I explained that there's only 1 shot, and that shot came from the front. Also address the blood in the Zapruder film, whether or not that's been faked, and explain that blood that's in the Zapruder film that we see is back spatter, which is directed from the entry wound and in back towards the shooter. I talk about the trajectory of the headshot and where it could have come from, and surprisingly, it's not the grassy knoll. I walk the reader step through that trajectory analysis so that they can reach the same conclusions on their own. There are a lot of other chapters in here that speak about the different myths, and I'm hoping that my readers will come to understand how forensics can help unravel the myths concerning the assassination.
Okay. Has there ever been a book out that has been this in-depth and looked at the forensic that you have?
I don't think there is another forensic book that looks at a wide variety. Like, for instance, I'm talking about, in this particular book, witnesses and how reliable are they? What does it mean that they heard shots from different directions, or that they saw different things? Does it mean that they're being untruthful, or, is their perception of what happened just distorted, and why? So I think that some of these things have never been approached before. I don't know of anyone else in the forensic field that has looked at the Kennedy assassination in quite the same way.
Okay. With not giving too much away, how many shots do you think actually took place, and where do you think those shots came from?
I think we had shots from both the front and the rear.
Okay.
I'm not going to say how many.
You'll have to find out.
That's right.
You can pick up your copy of Enemy of the Truth by Sherry Fiester at JFK Publications at jfklancer.com. With that, thank you, Sherry. We're down here in Dealey Plaza behind the grassy knoll, behind the picket fence. We're speaking with a visitor from Liverpool, England, Lee Farley. He gave his first interview to the JFK Lancer conference this year, and we're wanting to find out, what he thought of the conference, what he thought of coming down here to Dealey, and also the conception of what people over in England think as far as what the Kennedy assassination means across the pond.
It's my first conference where I've spoken. I thought it was a fascinating conference. There was so many different types of talks. There was something there for everyone, because the JFK assassination is kind of split into different disciplines. You've got the ballistics, you've got the medical evidence, you've got Lee Harvey Oswald, his life, his history, and there was something there within the conference that kind of hit the button of the vast majority of people, because everyone's got their own interests,
Right.
Their own levels of specialism and expertise. We had quite macro level talks, which focused in on Kennedy's foreign policy and his things that were happening in Vietnam. And we also had my talk, which went to a very micro analysis of a bus ticket, a bus transfer. I thought it was relaxed, it was paced in an incredibly nice way that made you feel comfortable. The people were fantastic. The people would come over and ask you questions in a very unlike a lot of the forums that we go onto, where people are kind of at each throats all the time, we had people coming over and asking me very reasonable questions, thanking me for the work that I've done. So I had a great time. Absolutely fantastic.
Now, as far as the other part of our question, what do you, what's kind of the consensus over in England as far as what do they kind of think of, the Kennedy assassination?
I think back in England, if you look at the United Kingdom, I think everyone who I speak to has an interest in this case. It mightn't be to any particular level, but the minute you mention the name JFK, there's almost an interest. There's something within that individual wants to know what you know about this case. The main question that I get presented with when I say that I'm a JFK researcher and I've been interested in the case for 25, 26 years is who did it? Unfortunately, that's the question we're still trying to figure out. We know kind of how it went down, we know some of the plotters that were involved, we know what didn't happen. We don't know who actually did it insofar as who fired those weapons, and we perhaps will never know. But there's certainly an interest, and I think, especially in the current kind of economic times that we're living in, historical basis, I think people are beginning to look at the likes of Kennedy again, because I think he brought, if you look at the Obama administration when he came in 2008, he came in on a platform of hope and change, and it didn't actually manifest, it hasn't occurred yet in American society. I think John Kennedy did bring hope and change. I think he was implementing it, I think the infrastructure was beginning to be developed. I think another 4 years of Kennedy, we would have seen massive changes internationally, domestically within the United States. You would have seen trade with Cuba possibly, more friendly relations with countries that were perceived as being communist or socialist in some way. We would have seen relationships open with the Soviet Union, with Khrushchev, and all of that kind of went away when he was killed. And I think people are looking at that event now and asking those what-if questions. What if he would have survived? What if he would have lived? Would the world be different now? Would we be sat on a precipice, an economic precipice, waiting to fall off the end of the cliff? Or would he be created something where we wouldn't have to be controlled through some of the stuff? So I think the links are there. I think people are beginning to identify them. Everyone has an interest in it, especially in Liverpool, where I'm from. It's a big Irish. It's got a lot of Irish people, it's got a lot of Irish descent, and obviously Kennedy was an Irish Catholic man. So there's massive interest. I remember I used to visit my grandmother's house, and she had a picture of the Pope, the current Pope, on the wall, and she always had a picture of John F. Kennedy. There was always that connection. There was always, there was pride within the Irish community that this man had achieved what he had achieved. So the interest there, I think he represents something in the minds of people, not just the UK, but in Europe. He was idolised in Germany, he still is. He has roads named after him. So for me, I think a lot of people over in England are asking, why haven't you faced up to it yet? Why haven't the Americans faced up to the fact that this guy was taken out through a coup d'etat or through a violent change of government? Everyone knows it. Everyone who's got two brain cells to fire together knows that this is the case. The French have been committed and have kind of come to terms with their attempts on Charles de Gaulle's life, and they went, no, it happens. Yeah. And on they went. I think this country is strong enough to survive it, but it has to be committed. So you have to first admit to it, the government has to come out and give all the documents out and tell everybody what happened.
We got a couple more questions for you. Do you feel that Lee Harvey Oswald actually had anything to do with the assassination, either pre, during, or post?
No, I don't. I believe he was an FBI informant. I believe he was actively engaged in informant for the FBI. I think the officer he was reporting back to, or the special agent he was reporting back to, was James Hosty. I think James Hosty had a handle on Oswald every step of the way. He knew exactly where he was. And I think there were certain elements, certain things happening in that building just over there, with a guy called Joe Molina, who was a guy who worked in the payroll department at the Texas School Book Depository, and he was also also the chairman of the GI Forum for many years, back in the 1950s. The GI Forum, it was suspected that it was communist infiltrated. And it also had connections to a William Lowry, who was kind of like the head of the underground Communist Party in Dallas. It was a very, very small clique of people coming together. Most of them were informers for the FBI. William Lowry had a very close relationship with Joe Molina. There is no way on earth that William Lowry or Joe Molina would not know that an ex-defector to the Soviet Union would be working in that building. And William Lowry is actually on record after the assassination saying that once Tippett was killed, he thought that Lee Harvey Oswald was coming to find him. And William Lowry actually worked in a shoe store, which was in the opposite direction to the one that Lee Harvey Oswald went into, which was Hardy's.
Right, Johnny Calvin Brewer.
Johnny Calvin Brewer. And William Lowry was a manager of a shoe store in the opposite direction on West Jefferson called the Shoe Haven. And he thought that Oswald was looking for him. Don't know why. There's still more to the story to be found. It may be found at some point in more documents that may be released, but I don't think he had anything to do with the assassination. I think he was asked to leave, or he was told that there was going to be no more work for the day. I think he left a lot later than what we're told he left. I think he left about 1:45. I think the list that Jack Reville put together, which had a list of all of the different people working inside the Texas School Book Depository. His name's at the top. Now that suggests to me that he was the first person to leave, but that didn't start to happen until about 1:45. And I think he's come out, he's given his name, he's given a false address, because he gave a slightly different variation of the Elsbeth address. He didn't get the full address, which is indicative of Oswald and the way he worked. And I think he went out and he saw Bill Shelley, and Bill Shelley said, there's not going to be any more work, you might as well go. And someone, I don't know who, has offered him a lift, and off he's gone to the theatre. So, no, I don't think he had anything to do with it. And I think all of the evidence proves that he didn't have anything to do with it.
As far as the shot from back here behind the big fence, and as far as the shot from the school depository building, how many shots do you think was actually fired down here in your research? And approximately how many individuals or teams do you think were probably used to come up with the conclusion we have?
Okay, if I speculate, I think that there was 3 shooters. I think there was possibly 4 or 5 shots. I think one missed, hit the manhole cover. I think one hit Elm Street. I think you've got the one going into Kennedy's back, you've got the one going into Kennedy's throat, the one that hit his head off. So, probably 5 shots, 3 shooters. I think there was a shooter not here, but further down towards the triple overpass there, by the grate on the floor. I think it's more of a realistic shot. Plus it's got the convenience of the sewer system being directly under. If the person wants to escape, or even just to throw the weapon down, have someone else down there who can take that weapon away. And if they're wearing a uniform, they didn't just wander into the car.
So do you feel any shots at all originate from the 6th floor, any floor of the Texas School Book Depository?
I'm agnostic. I have to say I'm agnostic. If there was, it was possibly a warning shot. It was possibly the diversion shot that just got everyone looking at that building, so the thing could take place from in front and from elsewhere.
Well, in closing, would you tell our viewers, as far as especially the younger generation, that we're eventually going to hand this over to the future generations, what do they need to do in order to continue the fight to figure out, what really did happen down here in November?
Okay, you have got to just stick with the facts, stick with the evidence, try to speculate as little as possible. I think the speculation piece has got the community into a quagmire. I think in my presentation at Lancer Conference on Friday, I presented a series of statements, of witness testimony, of documents, of a whole host of different pieces of evidence, and I just wanted to leave it at that, because that for me tells the story of something that didn't happen. I was then asked the question, well, if that didn't happen, what do you think happened? Who knows? It's just one of those things where the minute I start to speculate, someone else can speculate something different, and then someone else argues against that, and you get into that. You know what didn't happen. It's about putting it together in a narrative. Try and avoid the speculation piece. There's nothing wrong with speculating as long as you put it out there that, in my opinion, this could potentially have happened, or this is a possibility. So then we can maybe start to get rid of some of the arguments and some of the egotistical behaviours that exist within the community, and all go for the goal, the objective, which is to find the truth.
And with that, we've been speaking with Lee Farley from Liverpool, England.
Thank you.
We're here at the Adolphus Hotel in Dallas, Texas on November the 17th, 2012 at the JFK Lancer Conference, and we're speaking with our special guest, Jim DiEugenio, and we're going to have him tell us about his books and a little bit about how he got into the Kennedy assassination, and we'll take it from there. Jim?
Thank you. I initially got interested in the Kennedy assassination back in the mid-1970s when I discovered Jim Garrison's interview in Playboy magazine, which was in late 1967. And I had been of the opinion about Garrison that he'd been caricatured by the mainstream media, and there really wasn't anything to his case. Once I read this interview, it changed my mind, because Garrison turned out to be just the opposite of what the media was depicting him as. He was very intelligent, very dedicated, very interested in the facts, and very articulate. From there, when I moved to California and I was going to film school, a friend of mine recommended that I went ahead and try and do a screenplay on the JFK case, and I did some further research, and I got as far as making some notes. And then around this time, I began to get wind that Oliver Stone was going to go ahead and do his film, JFK. So I turned my notes into my first book, Destiny Betrayed. I then went ahead and co-edited a second book called The Assassinations. And then I just revised and expanded and completely updated my first book for the second edition of Destiny Betrayed. And I have a website, ctka.net. And that's my contribution to the JFK case. All right, the closest, in my opinion, this case ever got to actually being potentially solved was in the first part of the House Committee on Assassinations, when they had Dick Sprague as the chief counsel and Bob Tannenbaum as his deputy counsel. Both those men were highly experienced homicide and felony investigators who had many, many years courtroom experience and had tried many, many, many cases through to a trial verdict. They were going to really do a full-out homicide investigation with all the materials necessary to take on a case of this magnitude. That was short-circuited, and it's a very long story how it got short-circuited. But Sprague was forced to resign, and Tannenbaum left about 9 months afterwards. And that kind of spelled the end to the hopes of having a really good investigation, an all-out full investigation, for the American people. So in that case, as far as having an absolute full, all-out report on what two experienced homicide investigators believed happened, then no, I think that was the last hope. But you can put together, in my opinion, a very good idea of what did happen for history. All right, and I think that's why most people are still involved in this case, because they're concerned about the way that this case will go down in history, whether the lie about Oswald will survive. All right, and that's at least one reason that I'm still in this case.
Okay. I'd like to talk about the Zeb Ritter film for just a few minutes. If you watch the Zeb Ritter film, you can see what looks basically like cuts and splices in the film. Can you tell me what your opinion is as far as is it altered, and is it still something we can actually rely on to give us the story as far as where the shots came from? Because in frame 313, in Oliver Stone's film, it comes back when the shots came from the front and he went back and to the left. Some people will say that no, all the shots came from the Oswald sniper's perch window. how do you feel as far as, is it something we can rely on as far as being a good piece of evidence, or because of the cut splices and that it was not something that was kept like any other evidence in a murder case, other people had it before the police got a hold of it. It actually got sold to Time Life from the Zapruder family. How do you feel about the Zapruder film on those points?
Well, there is a complete version of the Zapruder film. There's two levels you can talk about this. What we think is a Zapruder film, which was there were damaged frames and splices done through Time Life. But then when the ARB came through, they got the Secret Service copy, which was uncut, all right? And Robert Groden put together a complete version of the film. Now, one of the things you'll see if you watch that version of the film is that the excised frames were not an accident, because with those inserted frames, it's very clear to anybody that Kennedy was hit before he went behind the Stemmons Freeway sign. Now, why is that important? Because if you look at the Warren Commission report, they say that in order for that to happen, whoever was firing from the Texas School Book Depository had to fire to the branches of an oak tree. And if you've ever seen the simulations, that's not very conceivable. So in other words, with those frames in, it's very clear that Oswald could not have delivered that shot before Kennedy went behind the Stemmons Freeway sign. Now, in recent years, what I think your question is talking about at the end is, and by the way, let me say this, you can obviously prove conspiracy with the Zapruder film as it is in a number of different ways, one I just talked about. All right, what you're talking about is something that has gained more currency in the last several years about, was the Zapruder film really altered, deliberately altered, to not reveal things that would go beyond what I just talked about, all right? Well, I'm not a very big advocate of this because, like I said, I believe you can prove conspiracy with the Zapruder film as it is. But there is some fairly strong evidence that the back of Kennedy's head was blackened out. And what people who advocate for this position say that this was done in order not to reveal a blown out back of the skull, something which 17 medical people saw at Parkland Hospital when Kennedy was taken to that hospital, something that over 20 people saw at Bethesda Medical Center when the body was delivered there that evening. And why would this happen? Because this would strongly suggest a shot from the front, since, as most people know, entrance wounds usually leave small holes, while exit wounds usually leave large gaping holes when they exit the body, because they carry through all this tissue and bone with them, and they kind of explode out of the back of the body. All right, so there's a possibility that actually did happen.
Okay. Our video is going to be seen by students and new people getting into the Kennedy assassination to start researching, as well as other individuals that have been researching for quite a while. What would you, in your opinion, would you suggest for good books or videos or media to lean towards to get information, and what would you lean kind of farther to the left a little bit?
What do you mean by farther to the left?
As far as if somebody wants the whole story, they want, well, was it conspiracy, was it not? There's a lot, you've got books on both sides. Mm-hmm. So if you were on the conspiracy fact of it, and that's what you're looking towards, what would you suggest as material to actually
Okay, on my website, sitka.net, I have a list of the top 10 books, which I consider in the JFK case. And I go all the way back to the beginning here with the early books by Mark Lane and Sylvia Marr, accessories after the fact and rush to judgment. And those two are very thorough deconstructions of the Warren Commission. Later on, you got books that deal with a more wide range of topics and began by assuming that there was a conspiracy, all right, and then tried to say this is what actually happened. And some of the better books in that regard, you know, I believe, are things like Jim Douglas's book, JFK and the Unspeakable, Tony Summers' book, Conspiracy, Gaten Fonzie's book, The Last Investigation, Gerald McKnight's Breach of Trust. Those are some of the more recent books, I believe, that that work from a lot from the hidden record, as I like to say, you know, and try and build a case as to what actually did happen. John Newman's Oswald and the CIA is another one.
Okay. As far as having our annual conference out here in Dallas at the Adolphus Hotel, what do you hope to what do you hope will come out of having conferences like this, not only down here, but you know, in smaller groups or in bigger groups, even across the United States and across the world?
Well, these conferences are good because they gather like-thinking people around so they can exchange ideas and have an idea of what the most current research findings are in the community. All right, and they're a very rare chance for people to get together and exchange ideas and talk, you know, and try and come to some kind of consensus as to what we should actually be about and building towards the 50th anniversary, all right, which is, of course, about a year away from when we're shooting this, all right? So in that sense, they're good, and also I think they're sometimes inspirational in the sense that they try and honor some of the better people in the community, and also because I think they bring, every once in a while, they bring younger people into the case, which I think is important, because I think there's a real danger, because the mass media has been so god-awful on the JFK case. There's a real danger that younger people are not going to be aware of what really happened in this country. You know, and I think that's something we have to really be on the lookout for. All right, and so through the exchange of these ideas, videos, books, etc., hopefully that won't happen.
With the 50th anniversary coming in 2013, what are your predictions and what are your hopes that people will do about coming down to Dallas and going and returning to the scene of the crime? And do you think that we might have an outlook of where we may not, you know, people won't be welcome to go down to Dealey Plaza and get together and actually speak of ideas and talk back and forth?
Well, I think there's a lot of people who do at least hope that will happen. I think the 50th anniversary is a good opportunity. You know, whether or not we'll take advantage, of course, is something it's an entirely different question. There's no doubt there'll be a lot of people over here in Dealey Plaza, but it's pretty clear, I believe, that there are certain forces who are going to try and quash anything from really happening on the 50th anniversary. You have the 6th floor essentially trying to pen off Dealey Plaza. For what purpose, I don't know. It sure does sound like they want to be able to control what's going to be happening over there, because they know that that's a terrific opportunity, you know, for the best of the research community to show what they're actually really about, because there will be a lot of media here. I know this because on the 30th anniversary, which I was here, there was a lot of media here from the outside. Okay, so I think the other side is aware of that. That's something we have to worry about. Now, whether or not we'll have anything in the media that favors us, that's something we have to start looking at and working at, and hopefully creating something on our own. You know, there's a lot of possibilities now with the creation of YouTube, you know, for one, you know, the internet, etc., you know, and all this new technology that makes it much cheaper for people to go ahead and make their own media. All right, there's been a revolution in this, you know, in the last few years, in, you know, digital cameras and things like that. You know, and YouTube, if you can create a good video, you know, that is well made and interesting, you know, and you know how to promote it, it can really impact a lot of people. You know, and hopefully that's one of the things that that we'll attempt to do, and I hope we will do.
Okay. Just kind of a odd question, but definitely your opinion I'd like to hear. Speaking of technology we have today, do you feel that we would have had a different outcome completely if we had the technology back in '63 that we do now, as far as cell phones, as far as street cameras? That could
Well, I
actually
don't think there's
better
any
angles?
question about that, because you have the kind of crowd you had in Dealey Plaza that day. With the technology we have today,
Yeah.
they would have never gotten away with what they got away with. Okay, because there wouldn't have been just one Zapruder film. There would have literally been dozens of Zapruder films. And of course, what happened to the Zapruder film is that Time Life suppressed it, all right, and did not show any of the very revealing frames in the film. And it wasn't until Jim Garrison subpoenaed it from Time Life that it was actually shown. But since there was such a controlled reaction to the Clay Shaw trial, the truth of what the Zapruder film showed did not penetrate very far past that courtroom. But believe me, the people inside the courtroom were shocked when they saw the film, and the jury requested to see it 9 or 10 times. After that, it was not shown nationally on television until 1975. When it was shown nationally in 1975, it created a sensation. It was actually the main reason that the new investigation was commissioned by the House Select Committee. Because it was shown in '75, the House Select Committee was voted in 1976. And from the research I've done, the Zapruder film played a prime role in that. Because Tom Downing, one of the guys who pushed for it, was given a private screening by his son, who was a student at the University of Virginia, and inspired Tom to work for the beginning of the House Select Committee on Assassinations. All right, so your question, yes, if there would have been a technology we have today, back in 1963, there's a very good chance that things would have been different, yeah.
You've been in Dealey Plaza many times and walked around and looked at all the buildings, places where a possible shooter could have actually taken shots from, and where different teams could have been stationed to, you know, have a turkey shoot, as it was stated in the JFK film. If say, you know, you wanted to say, I want to put a team here to, you know, assassinate, you know, the president, where would be the best spots that you feel are in Dealey Plaza to take a shot and actually get the results that they had in '63?
Well, I kind of go along with what Jim Garrison thought and what's depicted in the film. I believe that there was one person behind the stockade fence on the grassy knoll towards the end. I think that's the guy Lee Bowers saw, all right, and that's the witness who was in the big rig behind the picket fence. All right, I think there was one in the Texas School Book Depository. Of course, it wasn't Oswald behind him. And I think there was one in the Taltex building, which is across the street from the Texas School Book Depository. And in the military trade, this is called, what they call it, an L-shaped ambush, in which you have the target caught between two extreme points and one in the middle. And there's no way in the world that he can escape that kind of triangulation, you know, of crossfire. Somebody is going to hit him, all right, and somebody's going to go ahead and get the killer shot off. That's what I think happened.
Okay. How many shots do you feel that were fired that day?
Probably at least 6.
At least 6.
Yes.
Okay. As far as the evidence that was basically stacked against Oswald, which he was never, he's the alleged assassin, he was never actually tried. Jack Ruby put an end to that before he could actually stand trial and be charged with he was charged with the killing of the president. Not in a court of law, but it had been stated on TV by the Dallas police chief that they feel they had their man.
Yes.
How do you feel as far as with the evidence that they had, do you feel that it would have been enough to have convicted Oswald? And also, do you feel that he was basically put together from, day one when they, decided, hey, we're going to have somebody to take the fall. We need our fall guy.
In my opinion, if Oswald would have had a competent lawyer, and if the competent lawyer would have been able to finance, an investigation on his part, right, and he really believed in Oswald's innocence, I think it would have been very difficult to convict Oswald. Now, as far as Oswald being put together, I think it's very hard to look at what happened to Oswald in New Orleans and Mexico City and to come to the conclusion that there was somehow not anything planned in advance. And if you put together the Chicago plot, which happened in the first week of November, with what happened in Dallas in 3 weeks later, I think it's very hard not to come to the conclusion that somebody was out to kill Kennedy before the end of 1963 to be sure he was not reelected in 1964. All right, because there was an attempt to actually kill Kennedy in the first week of November in Chicago that was very similar in circumstances and in design to what later happened in Dallas. Now, if you then went ahead and compared the two fall guys, Thomas Valet in Chicago with Oswald in Dallas, they're very similar in their profile. Both former Marines, associations with anti-Castro Cubans, kind of misfits, or appeared to be misfits in their personalities, and so they were very much of the kind of people that are easy to frame, because they seem disaffected, they seem unsatisfied, and they seem ideologically opposed, to the target of the plot. So yes, I do believe that Oswald was being designed to take the fall, and I do believe that it was several months in advance that this planning took place. You can't put together one of these things in a few weeks. Okay, there's a lot of things to think about. There's a lot of things to design. There's a lot of what these guys call putting the plumbing in, before you can flush the toilet. All right, so it takes a while to go ahead and design and then execute these kinds of machinations. Now that's not to say that the conspiracy in this case was anywhere near perfect, because it was certainly not, for a lot of different reasons, which, like I say, you can read in Sylvia Maher's book, Accessories After the Fact, or Tink Thompson's book, 6 Seconds in Dallas. And that is what any kind of attorney would have been looking for in order to get Oswald acquitted. All right? Now, whether or not that would have been achieved, because the cover-up in this case was so powerful, by the FBI and the Dallas police, but still, eventually, and the Warren Commission, eventually enough leaked out that, at least in the court of public opinion, very few people believed the Warren Commission report today. So, and as they say, to get away with a big crime, you don't have to commit the perfect crime. You have to control the cover-up.
Okay. How about on the fact of everybody likes to point the finger at somebody? Well, who did it? It's not obviously the butler. But as far as mafia, CIA, FBI, who do you feel as either particularly one individual, or do you feel what group do you think would have had the more pull to actually pull something like this off?
Well,
and continue to cover it up today.
Well, my thoughts about this are that on the covert action part of the plot, I think it was a combination of the CIA and the mafia, with the CIA going ahead and setting up Oswald, setting up the ambush in Dealey Plaza, and then bringing in their mafia guys, their friends from the anti-Castro plots, to go ahead and bring in Ruby when Oswald escaped from the scene, escaped from the Texas Theater alive. you know, and since Ruby was friendly with several mobsters, okay, I think it would have been pretty easy to one of them make a call and go ahead and say, we have to get rid of this Oswald guy, Jack, and you're going to help us with it, whether you like it or not. You know, and as far as then the cover-up, the FBI clearly went ahead and snapped on the cover-up, you know, that evening. Okay, it happened very, very quickly. Hoover despised the Kennedys, and he strongly suspected he was going to be fired, you know, if Kennedy won re-election, which, of course, was actually going to happen. J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI at that time. And then Lyndon Johnson, of course, wanted to be re-elected, so he went ahead and certified the whole Warren Commission cover-up, even though he knew it was a cover-up. He never believed the magic bullet theory, which, of course, as everyone knows, is the keystone to the Warren Commission's case against Oswald. If there is no magic bullet, then there's a conspiracy. Right? He never believed the magic bullet. All right.
Okay. In the speaking of Ruby, in the film Ruby that came out right shortly after JFK came out, they kind of painted Ruby as, you know, just, you know, carousel club owner. As far as his actions in the mafia, and, you know, as far as how much he could have actually been in, do you feel that he had any part of the actual planning, or just strictly he was called in to take out Oswald?
There was some evidence that Oswald and Ruby knew each other. The Warren Commission, of course, denied all this. Yeah, but there's some very compelling evidence, I believe, that the two knew each other. All right. Now, there's also the Julianne Mercer testimony about seeing Ruby that morning in Dealey Plaza, and was with a colleague, and then the colleague going ahead and taking what looked like a long box up to what we call the grassy knoll today. And Julianne Mercer identified this person as Jack Ruby.
Okay.
Why she was showed those pictures in the first place is a very interesting question that has never really been answered. Okay, and she said that she identified Ruby the day before he shot Oswald. Very, very interesting testimony there, which of course the Warren Commission found a way to go ahead and get around. All right, so Ruby was a very good guy, if you consider all this. He was a very good guy to call in to go ahead and polish off Oswald, because not only is there evidence that he knew Oswald, not only is there evidence that he was in Dealey Plaza that morning, there's also evidence he was at Parkland Hospital when JFK was there. There's two very credible witnesses who say that he was actually at Parkland Hospital. All right, and then of course he was at the police station Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And there's 4 witnesses who said that they saw him at the police station 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, trying to find out when Oswald was going to be transferred. Because the original schedule was he was going to be transferred at 10. Okay, then this was delayed. Ruby went back home, came back to the Western Union Station, which is less than a block away from the back of the Dallas police station. You know, and then of course, he came in and he had, it's almost a proven fact that he had help, you know, getting into the police station. And then he hid behind the cop. They brought out Oswald. There was 2 horn blasts. One when Oswald comes off the elevator, the other one right before Ruby jumps forth and shoots him. So I think that's pretty strong evidence that Ruby had accomplices within the Dallas police force to go ahead and polish off Oswald.
Okay. Jack Ruby's brother had actually made the comment that his brother told him that he wasn't trying to kill Oswald, because if he wanted to kill him, he wouldn't have just shot him in the stomach. He just wanted to hurt him. I spoke with Dr. Robert McClellan several times, and he said, well, actually, the shot that, you know, Ruby gave to Oswald went right from the side all the way through, took out major organs. It wasn't obviously it wasn't very long for him to internally bleed out and die from his injuries and his wounds. What do you feel about that? Do you think that, you know, he should have? Was he trying to kill Oswald? Just shoot him, or he could have shot him anyway. Could have shot him in the heart. Could have shot him in the head.
Well, he ended up doing the job, didn't he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, definitely. Whether the shot came anywhere, he did the job.
Right. I mean, he knocked out 4 vital organs.
Yeah.
Oswald was dead within an hour and a half. Okay, so there's very little doubt, that he was trying to kill Oswald. I believe, and he was trying to get off a second shot, by the way. All right, so that was his job, and he achieved it. I mean, I'm not a medical person, I can't, but one of them was a spleen. All right, and so when you can do that kind of a job with just one shot, I think that's doing a very good job. All right, now let me add another very interesting thing about this. If you take a look at the shot of the photo of Oswald being killed by Ruby, most people only show the cropped version, which includes basically Ruby and 3 or 4 people around him. But as I tried to show today, when you show the uncropped version of that photograph, you will see 10 or 12 people around, and as Ruby's killing Oswald, every single person is staring at Oswald except one person, Will Fritz, who has broken the formation, the planned formation to protect Oswald, and is at the front corner of the photo, and he is not looking around. He's not turned around, even though Ruby has just shot Oswald. All right? Now, before they brought him out, the formation was supposed to be like a diamond formation around Oswald to get him to the transport.
And have Oswald in the middle.
Fritz in front, 2 guys on the side, 1 behind them, which is a very good protection pocket. And if you take a look at the film, it very dramatically shows that Fritz broke the formation, and he created a space of about 10 or 11 feet between where he was supposed to be and where he was. And it's Fritz breaking that formation that goes ahead and allows Ruby to jump forward and kill Oswald. Without him breaking that formation, he could not have got that shot off.
Do you think Fritz had any knowledge or orders to actually break formation?
I can't answer a question like that. All I can tell your viewers is to go ahead and look at the film, which is on YouTube, and take a look at what Fritz does, and it looks a little bit suspicious.
Okay. From a newbie perspective, or for somebody that's gotten into it but hasn't gotten full blown like you have as far as research goes, and to study the Kennedy assassination, what would you think to tell our viewers as a closing about the Kennedy assassination? Anything that we've left out, and the best way they can go out and search for the truth?
Well, to actually get a really good introduction to the case, one of the books I mentioned previously is very easy to read because it's so visually oriented. And for a person entering the case, it's very easy to understand because there's so many photographs in it. It's almost like a picture book. All right, and that's Josiah Thompson's 6 Seconds in Dallas. And it's a brief book. It's only about 280 pages. You subtract all the illustrations and the photographs, it's probably about 200 pages long. You can read it in one night or two. But that has all the elements which explodes the Warren Commission's case, and does a very good job, I believe, in exploding the Warren Commission's case against Oswald. And like I said, it's a very easy introduction to read and to visualize and to understand. So if I was recommending a beginner book on the case, that would be it.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, opposed to secret proceedings, to censor the news, or to withhold from the public the facts they deserve to know.
Well, the Dallas Police Department said Oswald killed Kennedy. They said they knew he done it, cause it caught him hiding in the back of the Texas movie. Mr. Jack Ruby said he did it too, though he knew it wasn't true. To hell with the truth, shoot him in the gut. Live TV, Sunday afternoon. Oswald didn't do it, I'm telling you the truth. Oswald didn't do it, no more more than me and you. Oswald didn't do it, no matter what we're told. When the president's head exploded, he was eating lunch and drinking a Coke. Just drinking a Coke. Well, the New York Times said he did it, and CBS News said it too. Mr. Dan Raven, Life magazine, they all believed the leaders told the truth. And even Judge Earl Warren, riding posse for LBJ, said with only 3 shots, $12 gun, he wiped out Camelot, wiped out Camelot on Friday. But Oswald didn't do it, I'm telling you the truth. Oswald didn't do it, no more than me and you. Oswald didn't do it, no matter what we're told. When the president's head exploded, he was eating lunch and drinking a Coke. Well, the Congress up in Washington believed the agency when it said there might have been 2, but it was a long time ago. Good Lord, it's time to put this thing to bed. And every now and then, as the years just roll away, somebody pops up, tries to tell the truth. Nobody gives a damn. Anyway, Oswald didn't do it, I'm telling you the truth. Oswald didn't do it, no more than me and you. Oswald didn't do it, no matter what we're told. When the president's head exploded, he was eating lunch. When the president's head exploded, he was eating lunch and drinking a Coke. And drinking a Coke. Just drinking a Coke. Didn't do it. The boy was framed. Poor boy was framed. Tell you the truth. Check it out.
Well, I will answer that question directly then, since you will not rest until you get your answer. I worked in Russia. At no time did I attempt to renounce my citizenship, and at no time was I out of contact with the American Embassy.
Check it out.
The Fair Play for Cuba Committee is an independent organization. We are not at all communist controlled. Our aims and our ideals are very clear and in the best.